Imagine using a huge, expensive truck to deliver a very small package when a normal delivery van would do the job at just a fraction of cost. Well, that's exactly what the Trump administration did with deportation, using massive military aircraft instead of regular civilian planes. But now the experiment is over. When Donald Trump became the president, one of his biggest promises was to crack down on illegal migration. Right? He wanted to show the world that his administration was very serious about removing people who entered the United States without permission. To prove this, he took a very extreme step, using military planes for deportations. Military planes are usually used for war missions, carrying soldiers and heavy equipments. But now the Trump administration started using them to send migrants back to their home countries. This included planes like India, Guatemala, Ecuador, etc., and even the US military base at Guantanamo Bay, which is in Cuba. The idea was to make deportations faster, stronger, and more intimidating. But in reality, this plan wasted millions of dollars and created more problems than the solutions. Using a military aircraft for deportations turned out to be shockingly expensive as compared to regular deportation flights. Let me tell you why. The US usually uses immigration and customs enforcement flights which cost between $8,500 to $17,000 per flight hour. In comparison, a C-17 military transport aircraft costs about $28,500 per hour, almost 3 times more. A single deportation flight to India cost about $3 million. Well, that's a lot. Deporting a small group of migrants to Guantanamo Bay costs at least $20,000 per person. And what did the US get in return? About 30 deportation flights on C-17s and about a dozen of C-130 planes. Now, these flights were burning a hole in government's pocket, something even Trump's own officials realized was unsustainable. The high costs weren't the only problem here. Many countries didn't want to accept deported people on military planes. Mexico, Colombia, and several other Latin American nations refused to allow US military planes to land in their territory. Colombia said no to military deportation flight. Trump then threatened to impose tariff, that is, extra taxes on their goods. After some negotiations, Colombia agreed to accept deportees, but only on regular commercial flights. Mexico also refused US military deportation flights, and instead they made arrangements for deported people to return through civilian flights. Then comes Venezuela, which often resists taking back deported citizens, recently arranged commercial flight to bring back their 190 migrants on their own terms. On the top of that, military planes couldn't fly over Mexican airspace, so they had to take longer routes, increasing fuel costs and flight time as well. But the question is, why did Trump do it in the first place? Trump's decision to use military planes was more about sending a message than being practical. He wanted to show the world, and specifically his voters, that he was taking an extreme stance on migration. But in reality, this move, A, didn't make deportations more efficient, B, was far more expensive than ICE flights, C, created unnecessary conflict with other countries, and D, ended up being quietly shut down. On March 1st, the last military deportation flight took off, and within days, all scheduled flights were cancelled. While the government hasn't officially called this a permanent policy change, it's clear that the problem failed both financially and diplomatically. So basically, at last, Trump tried to make immigration enforcement look stronger by using military planes for deportations. But instead, he wasted millions of taxpayers' dollars, upset other countries, and ultimately had to abandon the plan. Now, deportations are back to the regular ICE flights, which are cheaper, easier, and more efficient. The military planes are back where they belong to, handling defense operations, not immigration removal. It's a classic case of style over substance, right? And in the end, the American taxpayers footed the bill for Trump's expensive stunt.